Welcome to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. These podcasts, as you know, are designed to explore some of the implications of the longevity revolution on our families and our community and contemporary culture in which we're living. You can contact us, as we mention every week, for suggestions or comments to Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. And of course, we invite you to visit our website, jewishsacredaging.com, and to the Facebook page, Jewish Sacred Aging on Facebook. Today, we have a very, very, very special two guests coming to us from a variety of places around the world, so which is very, very exciting. And we'd like to welcome to the Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast, Taylor Winfield, the founder of RUACH, and Karen Sussan, a team support leader. I think I got that right, for RUACH. First of all, welcome. Karen is up the turnpike a little bit in New York, but Taylor's just a little bit farther away in Pretoria, South Africa, where and so ladies, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let's get right to it, because I'm going to surmise that a lot of people who may be watching or listening may not know what the organization RUACH is. So Taylor is the founder of RUACH. Could you just walk us through what this is? What was your dream in starting this project?
Yeah, so RUACH started in March 2020, really when North America was starting to see the COVID-19 pandemic come onto our front doors. So I remember March 15th, it was actually my birthday, and I realized I wasn't going out for my birthday and that the world around us was changing and changing quite rapidly. I was also just finishing up a unit of clinical pastoral education, where I was training as a spiritual care intern in addition to my graduate work in sociology. I realized we were on the brink of not just a public health emergency, but also an emotional and spiritual emergency, and that people were going to be increasingly isolated and having a lot of spiritual questions and questions of meaning during this time. So, like many other millennials, I sort of watched what was happening on social media, and I started offering my support to people who were posting and saying that they needed someone to talk to. I quickly realized that the need for this sort of support far surpassed what I was able to offer. And fortunately, I was connected with many other clergy members, psychologists, social workers, many other emotional and spiritual care providers. So I reached out to my networks and asked if anyone would be interested in coming together to offer free emotional and spiritual support to people struggling during the pandemic. And immediately, I had about 20 people respond. We voted on a name, and on March 26, 2020, we launched officially as RUACH Emotional and Spiritual Support. And from the beginning, it's been a very collaborative and team effort, and Karen was one of our very first volunteers.
So let me follow up on a couple of things that you mentioned that may jump out of it. This is done virtually. This is on a website, correct? Number two, correct. Is this therapy? Is this psychotherapy?
Yes. Those are both really great questions, and I'll start, and maybe Karen wants to jump in. So the first thing is we're offering support. We are not offering professional mental health services. We are not offering psychotherapy. What that means is we're trained listeners. We're there if somebody needs someone to talk to, and all of our volunteers do have training, either as chaplains, clergy, or mental health providers, but we are not offering mental health services. And the way it works is you sign up through our website and you're matched with one of our supporters and have 6 free sessions where you're able to talk about whatever's on your mind. And if you need continued support, we try to help with referrals to more long-term solutions.
So, and Karen, so Taylor's talking about the train. Is there a vetting process? I mean, how do you know somebody hears about this, they go to your website and, gee, this is something I want to do. But is there a vetting process to make sure that they're just not working out some of their unresolved issues from something that happened 35 years? I'm being very serious. Is there some sort of a vetting process?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and has been part of the growing pains as we develop. And there had been a request that everyone provide their credentials. Of course, there's interviews before people sign up and come on. So that's still the case, and we're developing now and re-evolving, questioning, and looking at that as well. That issue. And I want to say something about being online. We do have a website, and we have a screener there, a connection to a screener. People who are interested in getting help from RUACH volunteers sign up through the screener. And then we're very client-centered, so once they're hooked up with a care provider, they and the care provider figure out the best means for support. Most of it has been remote. A lot of it has been by video or telephone.
And so for those of us from Philly, we have to keep things pretty simple. You say that you sign up through a screener. Is that screener a person, or is that screener some sort of device on the website? And while we're starting, again, mention the website. What's the website?
I don't have it memorized. Taylor, you want to say what the website is? RUACH.
It's ruachsupport.org.
There you go.
Okay.
So it's RUACH, RUACH.org. And basically you go to our website, and the screener is just, you answer a few questions. What are you looking for? Why are you reaching out to us? What can we help you with? And to go back your question about how do we know someone's not coming to us to resolve 35 years of anguish?
Whatever.
The truth of the matter is, there are some people, and we're happy to speak to them as long as they know that it's not psychotherapy. And for some of those longer standing topics and difficulties, it makes more sense to try to work with a therapist or a social worker who can be working with you for a longer period of time. For people who are immediately in crisis or having an emergency, we immediately refer them to crisis hotlines. And it says on our website, if you're having an emergency or in crisis, here are the websites or call centers to look into. And if someone in their response to our screener, we feel that what they need goes beyond what we can offer and the capacity of support, we then also refer them to more crisis, immediate-oriented services.
The screener is for potential people who are reaching out to us. I thought you were talking about credentialing of the people who are receiving calls. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll jump to that now because I want to take it step by step. Okay, so no. Okay. I'm feeling this free-floating anxiety, sort of like ennui, et cetera, that everybody is going through this last almost now 2 years. I go to ruachsupport.org. I fill in the little thingy, Q&A or whatever. I push that button, I guess, what says enter or whatever. Now, then, Karen, what happened? You received that, and I'm matched with somebody?
Exactly. Your information goes onto a form, which I and another volunteer receive, and we look into. Sometimes we discuss, and sometimes it's very clear what's being requested. We discuss and try to match up with the right person. Sometimes we will reach out for clarification to the caller to see, to fine tune what they're asking for and what they're looking for. And sometimes at that point, if we do think somebody is, for instance, actively suicidal or whatnot, we will direct them to the proper source of help. But then we assign people. The next thing is they get a call from the provider.
Oh, so I would get a call from so-and-so.
Or an email, depending on your preference.
Okay. Now, from the people who have volunteered, I imagine to be the the listeners, let's just say the listeners, how do you recruit these people? How do you check their qualifications? And is there some sort of follow-up to avoid burnout? Or just saying, I've done enough. I'm done. How do you sort of like handle that? Oh, just jump in, somebody.
So that's what I was explaining early on. I misunderstood you and thought you were talking about the providers. As I said, that providers are, Taylor mentioned too, do have credentials and training. However, we're only providing support, not therapy. There are spiritual directors, there are chaplains, psychologists, social workers, mental health counselors, rabbis, chaplains. All of these people can apply. They certainly are interviewed, and we do look over for the veracity, the accuracy of what they're providing us. We take it from there. In answer to your other question, which is a real challenge, because of course everyone who's a provider has been also going through the pandemic and living their lives forward, simultaneously trying to help people through RUACH. We do have a team meeting and we do provide support. That's my job. I'm there to help people and ask the question, can you really take on one more client right now? Maybe it's more realistic for you to focus on X rather than Y right now. There's a whole group that meets weekly and is very, very supportive of one another, and reflecting not only just for the case of looking at what clients are going through, but what we're going through, giving each other support. And I do think that really helps with burnout. I'm always the one trying to remind people they don't have to fix, as it says in, Jewish sages say, we're supposed to address the task, but we don't have to complete it. So I ask people, are you biting off more than you can chew in your effort to serve?
How are you recruiting the providers? How are you recruiting the social workers, clergy, et cetera, to form this cadre of listeners?
Yeah. So right away, I mentioned immediately after I reached out to my networks, we had about 20 people. Within a month, that grew to about 120 people. And so especially in the first few months of the pandemic, we had a plethora of supporters eager to help. And I found that people were especially eager to help because it gave them a sense of empowerment. They felt like they were doing something in a situation where people felt very powerless. So it was a way to sort of give back to the community and feel like working towards easing some of the suffering. We did find that after our first few months, we had supporters who needed to get back to their everyday jobs, just weren't able to invest to the same degree. However, it has never been a problem for us recruiting people to be supporters. There's more supporters than we actually can use at this point. Our main thing is making sure that our service reaches the people who need it the most. So our capacity to serve is far greater than the people that are coming to us right now. So what we really need is to help spread the word about our service, making sure by word of mouth, by website, by advertising, people know that RUACH exists. And then, God willing, we can then recruit more supporters and continue to grow in that capacity as well.
Are you finding you're intimating there's been a drop off of the number of people applying for help? Do you find that people just, after almost 2 years, it's just, I don't want to deal with it anymore. I just can't deal with it anymore. I'm just going to just get through day by day.
I can speak a little to that. I think that what we're discovering in once the vaccine was available and so on, is that people are dealing with the transition where we are now, the implications, the impact of the pandemic, And now, as it continues to unfold, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty. Yes, there's people who wish it would just go away, but there are plenty of people who do reach out to us. And when we do, we take them where they're at. We're very client-centered in that regard. And we're able to reach them where they are. It's more to the point is, this is, for instance, an opportunity for us, Rabbi Address, to let people know who aren't necessarily in the catchment where where our social media has reached. We're hoping to help more people and be of service to people who we otherwise only imagined and brainstormed we could help, like people who are isolated at home, unable to get out of the house, maybe families of people who have isolated loved ones, who want to reach out to us, people who are aging, people who have chronic illnesses. These are all people we were dreaming about helping, and your podcast is actually an opportunity for us, hopefully, to reach some of those, or the families of some of those, who can then try to encourage their loved ones to reach out to us as well.
Again, we're talking to Taylor Winfield, the founder of RUACH, Karen Sussan, a team support leader for RUACH, the website ruachsupport.org. The name implies Jewish. Are you reaching non-Jews?
Yes. So first, most importantly, we offer support to people wherever they are, whatever their background is, whatever their religious preference. All of our supporters are Jewish in terms of spanning the whole denomination of Judaism. So we're really able to serve completely atheist Jewish individuals to Orthodox Jewish individuals, renewal, reform, conservative, everything in between. And we have had clients who are non-Jewish. We're more than happy to serve anybody regardless of their tradition. One thing that clients tend to find very special about our service is that maybe they have a therapist, but the therapist just doesn't get the Jewish angle. Or maybe they have a rabbi they really like, but the rabbi doesn't get the emotional support angle. Or so we're sort of where emotional and spiritual support meet. And Karen can talk more about that, but we offer a really integrative approach to emotional and spiritual support. However, we meet people whatever spiritual and emotional means to them and whatever they're looking for in that moment.
Karen, did you want to follow up on that?
We do provide both emotional and spiritual support. Providers are Jewish, but there's a gamut of identification both with providers, and we reach out to, as Taylor said, people who aren't Jewish. We reach out to, if somebody's having an existential crisis, if somebody is completely atheist, they can still use our service. They don't know if they're searchers and seekers. We have spiritual directors who are a part of our group, people like me who are both rabbis and trained to do psychotherapy, and even part of Taylor's vision and the early vision of the organization still really is a thread through it all, which is this idea that there's emotional and spiritual support that can be married or wedded, and that you may have heard the term spiritually integrated psychotherapy.
Yes,
so yeah, you are. I know. So
I assigned it to my classes in the D-Min program that I teach in. So exactly. So we're familiar with it.
Yes, and so the vision is to be able to provide support where people can comfortably shift and be totally focused on client-centered therapy, mind the resources that they have and may not even know they have, and create new ones for resiliency, for improving their lives even. Of course, it's a tall order in 6 sessions, but we do what we can to focus and help people a little bit with some of those issues as well. And there are people who are very interested in exploring their Judaism. There have been people who've even asked questions during the pandemic of how halakha would apply and talked to rabbis specifically focused, or with Taylor. Taylor loves to do text studies with people as a way of healing. So there's a whole lot of room for people to explore both the spiritual and their emotional.
Both of you have mentioned that I sign up, I'm matched, and I have 6 free sessions. What happens after the 6th session and I'm developing a relationship with my person, my provider? Does the curtain come down and that's it? Is there a sort of like RUACH 2.0? What happens? Or is it just 6 sessions and that's it?
So 6 sessions, just to quickly. So what's really interesting about RUACH is there aren't, as far as we know, other organizations that cover this intermediate place. There's crisis hotlines and there's long-term care. But this sort of 6 sessions is built to help people get their feet on the ground and start imagining where they can go next. So it's not this sort of cut off 6 sessions, we're done. What happens is the provider will start talking about referrals, talking about what's next early on. So it won't come as sort of a shock. And but 6 sessions is all we're able to offer under the umbrella of RUACH. And from there, we can offer referrals either to public or private options for continued emotional or spiritual support, depending, of course, on what the person is looking for and health insurance and financial capacities all included.
The challenge of setting this up, what difference have you seen from the beginning, from March, April, May of 2020 to now, when we're almost, we're 18 months into this with no end in sight because of all these variants? Have you seen a difference in the type of person who's coming to you and the questions that they're asking? Or has it pretty much been the same since you began in March of 2020?
So I can speak a little to that. There are definitely less acute crises. People are also not dealing with acute grief. If a loved one died during the pandemic because of COVID. Still, though, you see over time people who are dealing with the impact that COVID has had on them, or issues that have come up at this point in their lives in the transition, which, nothing in this world right now can be viewed without the context of having experienced and lived through the last year. So those issues are coming up. People who are isolated in college, people who are estranged from family, people who have a gender identification issues, and the family discovers now, because of having been sequestered together, where do they go? How do they make adjustments in their lives and continue on? Those are a lot of the issues. People we have someone who had been kicked out of his house, had problems with a marriage, and the therapist's goal has been to help him move from being on a couch to having an apartment, and now finding therapy, as well as contending with a divorce that he never thought he would have had. And all of that is in 6 sessions, but the 6 sessions in that case have been creatively extended intermittently with goals and focus of support to help that person just have a friendly person to talk to help them and guide them and support them through that, and develop local resources. So the providers that are on board are very flexible and very open to meeting people where they're at, and helping people to accept and be realistic that this is, as Taylor said, a middle way. There have been people who've been helped towards the fall and winter this year who really needed therapy, but didn't understand that they did. And there's a lot of support and education that providers have given people to really give them like extra hand and knowledge to be more proactive on behalf of themselves, including discovering the key of why they had a hard time reaching out for help and giving them support to go that distance and connect with a therapist in their community. So these are the successes. Sometimes it's not so perfect, but people really do work at and are very committed to meeting people where they're at and passionate about helping them get to the next step.
You mentioned the idea of the grief, and one of the things that we're all, especially clergy, is dealing with is this repressed grief. You know, a loved one dies in the middle. We couldn't do the normal shiva, funeral, et cetera, et cetera. I've done a couple of situations where they say, well, we're going to wait until all this is over, and then we'll have some sort of a commemoration, or in essence, they call it shiva. I mean, did I hear you right? You're not seeing that as much now as you did before, or what?
I mean, I truly believe that the pandemic is evolving and the grief is evolving. I think exactly what you said, the sort of acute, immediate grief and the immediate uncertainty of what is happening and the after pandemic and imagining that things were going to go back to normal is really shifting over time. So there still are people who are losing loved ones. There's people waiting to be able to do the full shivas as you imagined. I think people now are really grappling with when is this going to end, if ever, and what does the new reality look like, and working with people through that is very important. There's various types of grief, and grief goes in waves. And just as the pandemic has gone in waves, I think we're seeing different sorts of grief coming up through time.
I would say that's absolutely, that's absolutely true. And Taylor's helping me remember that during the summer and the fall, and even now, there are people who've reached out to us with what I would call, social justice and issues around events that are going on with Black Lives Matter, anti-Semitism, that really hit home to them. It just hits a certain way. And perhaps these people have histories of trauma, are very involved, have been isolated. And these are all things that we do address. In fact, there was a group that reached out to us. I can't remember the name of the group, but we did a special support group for Jewish employees who had been very impacted by increase in anti-Semitism and really wanted a safe forum for discussing it. And we just kind of improvised, created, did research, and put something together for them, which they found very healing. I'm glad to say. So we are doing things that are a little different in the aftermath, but the pandemic isn't over. We're dealing with, as Taylor said, people who had hoped it would be a new normal and don't have their bearings, and what are they now? Who are they now? What's their life consist of? And we're able to give them some support.
So before we run out of time, Taylor, let me just come back full circle here. This is a dream of yours. You started it. It's up and running. Website, ruachsupport.org, RUACH, support.org. And that brings you into the portal and brings you into the community of Ruach. Let's assume that, the pandemic, this COVID thing is never going to go away. This is part of something that's going to be with us, vaccines, booster shots, et cetera, et cetera. But what's your dream after this thing sort of like mitigates itself down to the normal? And do you want to continue this process and expand it? Or when the pandemic sort of like reaches its final stages, shut Ruach down? Thank you very much. We did a great job. What's your dream?
So RUACH started in response to the pandemic, but its core values of integrating emotional and spiritual support and accessible mental and spiritual care are ongoing and are certainly not going to go away, even in a post-pandemic world, whatever that looks like. So I think right now we're most focused on our sustainability and outreach. So making sure that those who need support know that we exist, and working with organizations like Jewish Sacred Aging to make that happen. And so the biggest thing people can do is sort of spread the word about RUACH, let people know, share the website with your friends and family. And then as we become more sustainable and institutionalized to some extent, of course, grassroots and volunteer-based service is what we offer, then sort of looking at how we can pivot to meet the needs of people, again, wherever they are, whether it's an immediate crisis, whether it's in direct response to grief and loss, or more of these ongoing questions that we discussed, such as spiritual identity, being a support to people who may be marginalized in their communities, isolated from communities, and really being there as not only bridging the emotional and spiritual support, but also bridging them to longer term support systems when necessary.
So Taylor, thank you very much. This is, this is a great dream, and you should both feel very, very gratified that this dream is emerging into a sense of reality, and that you're helping people. And I wish you continued support and good luck. And again, the RUACHsupport.org, RUACHsupport.org. And we've been talking to Karen Sussan, the team support leader of RUACH, and the founder, Taylor Winfield. And I want to thank you both for giving us your time and educating us on this very, very exciting new project. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more about what you're doing. And so thank you. And stay healthy. That's the most important thing right now. Amen. So thank you very, very
much, everyone.
Amen. To all of you, thank you again for watching and listening to today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the TV show and podcast of Jewish Sacred Aging. Remember, we're on Roku, and we're also floating over to YouTube. So there's lots of opportunities to experience if you missed this particular one or hear it again. Again, we welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email me, Rabbi address at jewishsacredaging.com. And if you'd like to make a tax-free donation to continue our work, go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, scroll down and click on the donate button and just follow the prompts. It's really, really easy. Seekers of Meaning is produced in the Broadcast Center of Lubeck and Media Companies in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And a big shout out to our now award-winning producer, Steve Lubetkin. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address, and I look forward to greeting you again on our next Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast. In the meantime, stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Thank you.